I've only done one of these videos before, and my process has changed a lot since, so I think a new one is overdue. I don't always use the exact same process, but here's how I'll go about creating a lot of my illustrations. My first step is creating a sort of mini canvas, and painting a rough idea of what I want to do in grayscale. Just a plain round brush will work good for this, and more than anything, it's important to avoid adding any details. One of the reasons I like to start like this, instead of with a line sketch, is mainly because with sketching, it's easier to get caught up in details, instead of focusing on things like value read and composition. Working in grayscale without lines forces you to make sure the dark and light values are placed in a way that makes it easy to tell what's going on in your image. If you want to do the rest of the painting on top of this thumbnail, you can scale it up. But if you just want to use it for reference, you can keep it small. Working small really helps you keep it rough and simple, which is why I don't start out using the full canvas. You also have the choice of painting everything on one layer or separating your different elements. For this case, I used just a couple layers for my thumbnail and then merged them together. Be sure to flip your canvas and make adjustments to anything that feels off. And if you can zoom way out and feel good about what you see, it's time to move on to the next step. Create a new layer, and on this one you can start adding some rough line work and refining things. You can use a round brush, probably with pressure opacity turned on, or pretty much whatever else you want. I still try to avoid adding too many details while still in grayscale, and use a mix of brushes here, mostly messy or textury ones, and a tool to soften some edges as well. I soften quite a few of the edges here to bring more focus to the birds and the dog's face. The next layer I make is for adding color. I set its blending mode to color, and lay down a base color with a solid brush. After that, I use a semi-soft edge brush with pressure opacity to add more different colors. This is one of my favorite parts of this process because it's super satisfying and it's easy to try different things and experiment until you like what you have. When you're done, you can either merge this layer down or leave it be. I create another new layer and start doing more detailed painting. I like to add in lots of fun colors and use different brushes to achieve different effects, such as a square brush, a messy brush, a multicolored brush, and a foliage brush. A quick way to add interesting shapes is with the lasso tool. I make lasso selections and paint in them with a messy textury brush. The nice thing about painting on a new layer is that you can see the process you've made when you hide this layer. And if you realize you don't like a change you made, it's really easy to remove. When I'm satisfied with all the details in rendering, I merge it down and start making some slight adjustments with these sliders, usually to the saturation and contrast. Sometimes I duplicate what I have and use these automatic adjustments that Photoshop has to see what it thinks I should do. It's usually a pretty extreme difference when you compare both versions, but you can find a good compromise by lowering the opacity of this adjusted layer. When this is done, I merge my layers into one again. If you don't mind having layers build up as you work, you don't have to be a layer merging maniac like me. You can also duplicate your layers and then merge them so that you have backup copies for each layer. But I don't ever do that either. Oops! Anyways, at this point you can make any final touches you want to, and then it's time for the final adjustments. I add in a bit of chromatic aberration by messing with these sliders. That adds this bright colored edges effect, and you can either use a fancy slider or just paint in subtle darkened corners yourself, bringing a bit more attention to the center area of the canvas. Another way to bring the attention to the center is by adding a blur filter to the edges. I don't always do all these things, but I think it works well for this dreamy look I'm going for in this piece. Give your painting a noise filter for this grainy look, and last of all, I like to make one more new layer, set the blending mode to overlay, get a really soft brush, and in this case, I paint in some more yellow warmth into my light areas, and cool blue into the dark areas. This always makes more of a difference than I expect. At this point, I don't feel like there's anything left to do, and so I call it done. If you want to learn more about blending modes, this video should help on that. Thanks for watching!